Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's presentation. Happy Tuesday. I've got Stephen here from NewTechWood with an AIA-approved course on composite decking, sustainability, durability, and applications. Before we get into the presentation today, and while people are joining, wanted to give you a few things that you can look forward to in this presentation. First one, like I mentioned, it is AIA approved. So if you weren't able to submit your registration number when signing up for today's presentation, I'll drop that first link in the chat, and that's a great way to ensure you receive credit. The second thing I want to note is that we will be having a webinar poll about 3/4 of the way through the presentation. That is a really great way to connect with Stephen and a few other members of his team regarding price quotes, samples, product literature, technical information, stuff like that. And then the final thing that I wanted to note is feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A. And if we have time at the end of today's presentation, we'll make sure to get to them. And then, Stephen, would you mind quickly unsharing your screen so I can show them where to find you on Acelab? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this will be the next link I can drop in the chat. This is a really great place to find out more about NewTechWood's products, including any certifications that you might need as well. And then the last thing I'll show you guys is a new feature on Acelab to request, I'm just looking for that N, to request in-person lunch and learns, virtual presentations, any of the such with NewTechWood. So just providing some of your company name information and what type of meeting you're interested in. So that will be the third link I'll drop in the chat. Okay, enough of me talking. I will pass it over to Stephen and let me know if you guys need anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, howdy, y'all. Again, my name is Stephen Saxe. I am one of the sales reps that handles NewTechWood technical questions. I handle the Western US is the territory that I work with. So I answer install questions, work on inventory numbers, so a couple of different things that I do with our team. But today, now we're going to be starting our presentation, our AIA presentation about composite decking, sustainability, durability, and applications. A couple of things that I'll go through in this presentation. First of all, like we discussed, this is an AIA approved accredited course that you will be able to get. And I'm going to pop my chats over here so that I can see when that comes up later, because I am going to have a couple questions during the presentation that there is like an answer to, just to give us a little bit of a gauge of the knowledge on the presentation. So again, this is just some of the course information. This is a 1-hour approved course. So getting into the presentation itself. So we have a main purpose is just the learning of what is a WPC. So WPC is an acronym for Wood Plastic Composite. You're going to hear me say WPC a lot. It saves some time of having me saying Wood Plastic Composites 57 times during this presentation for you guys. And then we're going to cover a couple main points of the styles of composite deckings, the sustainability of them, safe and proper installation methods, and manufacturer recall recommendations, and diving a little deeper into a lot of those items. So, couple contents that I'll go through with this. So what is composite decking? Sustainability, types of WPCs, installation, maintenance standards and testing, and then a little bit of an overview of some case studies. First of all, what is composite decking? So durability and strength, eco-friendliness, financial savings over time, and contributions to wellness. These are all factors that go into why people choose a composite decking. Why are they going to pick composite over traditional wood or other materials that they could have for their outdoor spaces? There's value adds to homes. Putting a composite deck on a home traditionally raises the value significantly because of the longevity of the product, and it's using high quality materials to make it. And it is one of the approved products that you are seeing a lot around outdoor builds and pool decks. So it is barefoot friendly. I will caveat that with WPC decking, you are going to see it is hotter than regular wood in the summer. It does conduct heat because it is a plastic composite. So it is barefoot friendly, much more so in the winters or in the cooler months, I'll say. But if you live in a climate where there is extended periods of 90 above, this stuff does get warm. It really does, especially when exposed to sunlight. The sunlight doesn't damage the product, but it does get warm. So textured boards are much safer for traction as well. So they have higher slip coefficients than some materials. And there are different versions of products that offer cooling technology that can help with that heat that I mentioned. Now, a little bit of history. Mid 1990s is around when you saw these decks start popping up, and we're going to deep dive into the generations of composite decking here in just a second. But suffice to say, when composite decking first started, it was not the solution that it is now. There were a lot of issues with the original, we'll call it A section here, the non-capped decking. And then as time progressed, you got to see capped with a layer of wood powder, halfway capped, completely capped, and then fully capped. Each of these iterations of decking improved upon the previous. The two that you really see in the market today across different manufacturers is completely capped with a routed groove and fully capped. Those are the two that you mostly see. Let me see, like it is long-term maintenance. Yes, I am going to get into that, Jeff, about just the long-term maintenance, pressure washing. Answering that one really quick. I don't recommend pressure washing. If you ever need to pressure wash composite, fan tip, lowest possible setting, like don't crank up your pressure and you're staying a bit away from it, but really don't pressure wash composite. Mulgrew, yeah, I'll get into the rest of your question later in the presentation, but that's like a quick answer for you. So let's see here. Yeah. So these are like your 5 types of composite decking, but really these are the 5 like iterations of it. You see your D composite decking, so the completely capped with a routed groove, and fully capped are the 2 that you really see in the market today. So then 2 main types, scallop versus solid. And with solid deck boards, you will see grooved or not grooved deck boards. This just comes to where a lot of customers want to do a picture frame on the outer edge of their deck where they don't want to see grooves on the outer edge. But the difference between your scalloped and your solid deck boards is the amount of material used. That is your big difference. Your scallop boards, as you can see, have chunks taken out of the bottom, so they use less material, expand and contract less, but they are less material. So depending on the manufacturer, there can be different warranties or different lifespans expected on a scallop board versus a solid board. So then the durability of composite decking. So you are seeing a much higher resistance to weather, moisture, scratches, stains, and fading, all those. So those are a couple of things that you see. Yeah, Alyssa will have to answer that question. I am not sure who that is. But as I was saying, fully capped is going to have a lot longer duration of use in your marketplace than you'll see with some of the older generations of a composite deck board. With those, you have low cost maintenance and savings versus warranties. Most manufacturers are about a 25 to 30-year warranty. You see some differences across the market, but that is what goes on there. And then composite decking you don't have to sit there and refinish it. You don't have to sit there and constantly keep up with it. Most of the time, you really just need once or twice a year, you go just kind of wash it off with a regular hose. Don't need a pressure washer, don't need any extended maintenance. In the case that you do potentially see some form of staining on it, what a lot of manufacturers have noticed is doing something like getting some Dawn dish soap and like a non-abrasive sponge can clean off any stains that you may see on a composite material. Are there credits for landscape architecture presentation? That one is not something that I'm super sure about, Jeff. That's something that I believe our team that approves all these presentations would have to do. Because, yeah, laces is not something I'm super familiar with. So that's something that our marketing team could look into. So getting into sustainability. So sustainability with composite decking, most composite decking manufacturers are doing somewhere around a 50-50 blend of wood fibers and recycled plastics. And then you're seeing somewhere around 90 to 95% of recycled material in the vast majority of manufacturers' WPCs. This saves, depending on the country that the material is sourced from, several million pounds of plastics from landfills every single month. And different manufacturers source their products, both their wood and their recycled plastics, from different countries. So it varies across manufacturer. And for all composite WPC manufacturers, you're going to see, like I said, about a 25 to 30-year warranty mentioned, and this is a much greater than the usual 10 to 15 for natural wood decking. Then, with new builds, WPCs do meet LEED building design construction credits for different areas that whether you actually need these credits for building codes for certain states or you're just trying to get some extra points in the building. And I'm going to go over here in just a second what some of those are. But we follow in most WPCs the below listed environmental management systems and building codes for ISO. So these are some of the credits that you can get that the boards get hot. Is that correct? No, that is true. Yeah, the boards do get hot in the summer, especially. It is a composite material. They will get hot. If you live somewhere like Arizona, where you're going to be having, consistent 112-degree hot, like outdoor temperature, you're probably going to want to wear shoes when you're walking on a WPC deck in the summer. So the boards do get hot. Doesn't damage them at all, but they do get hot. So the couple things in LEED that WPCs can help meet, first of all, is heat island reduction, so solar reflectance. Just ASTM meets or calculates those thresholds. Environmental product declarations is another one that you can get a point for. Building product disclosure optimization. So if you can have the manufacturer disclosing, the percentage of recycled material, which, like I mentioned, for the majority of WPC manufacturers, you're over 95% of recycled material and material ingredients. So, well, building standard, holistic approach to building environment. Composite decking can help meet well requirements as well. Well requirements as well. That's fun. Other than just LEED standards. So just a couple of green building standards that you can meet by using WPCs as well. So a review question that I had for everybody, I think there's two more of these, but I went over 5 varieties of composite decking. So if anybody knows what those 5 varieties of composite decking are, there were 5 different ones. I'll give you a freebie. We started with non-capped. And then we went down from there. So the first one was non-capped, and then we went down from there. There were 4 more. I think they can answer in the chat. I'm not entirely sure.
I think so as well. We might need to
Okay.
see.
Are there updates on lead credit options for the LED version 5? I'm not sure about version 5. So chat disabled. So is that something you can do for them? I don't think I have an option to change that for them.
I will try my best. Let's see. Um, oh, there we go. I think I fixed it.
Excellent.
We'll see. Hopefully.
Okay, yep. Yeah, that is the first one. So there's 4 others. Yeah, capped halfway. That is one. Got 3 others. Fully capped. All right, 2 more. Yep, already, got uncapped. So there's 2 more. We already have non-capped, half capped, and full capped. There's 2 other ones. Non-capped, capped with groove. Okay, yep, that's another one. There's one more that we didn't get. Capped and grooved. Get it. 3, 2. Nope. Scalloped is not a different type. All right. Let me get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Daniel. That was the last one. Capped with wood powder. That was the last one. Yeah. So non-capped, capped with a layer of wood powder, rooted groove, halfway, and fully capped. Awesome, guys. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some types of WPC decking. So WPC, it's made from blend of wood fibers, recycled plastics, and then coated in polymer. So if you ever have somebody ask you, if you're trying to spec a job for WPC, or whether it's WPC decking siding, what is a WPC decking made out of? Recycled plastics, recycled wood fibers, and coated in polymer. It's those 3 things. It's not, we're not doing the rocket science over here. So the process to make these, 2-step process, compounding and forming. And there are a couple different ways that companies do the forming process, but first we'll start with compounding. So this is just where the wood fibers are mixed with the thermoplastics. Different manufacturers will either use high density polyethylene or PVC, but you want there to be a high ratio cellulose versus, because cellulose is cheaper. But if you have too high of a ratio, then they're less durable. So there is a magic number there of where companies are going to have a certain ratio of their cellulose versus a certain ratio of their coupling agents. Again, those ones are usually proprietary information for manufacturers. That's not something that you can usually get from a manufacturer, is what is their mixing ratio. But it is one of the things that makes different manufacturers of WPC unique, is they have different mixing ratios that they have found makes, in their different opinions, their product more durable or more reliable than others. And then you'll use different lubricants, different added materials on the surface for the polymer, which this has to do with the wood absorbing versus the water resistant application of it, in order to make the material hydrophobic on the outside so that you do not have water damage over time. So the forming process is something that you have, either extrusion or injection molds are the two primary methods. You will occasionally see some other methods, but extrusion and injection are your main ones. And then they get a proper surface treatment and then coated in their polymer based on the manufacturer. Now, the cap that I was just talking about, at the end of the day, your composite material, I know that I've said it's the three things, it's the recycled plastic and the wood fibers, but those are what end up making up the composite core. So you have your composite core and your co-extruded cap. Now, some manufacturers still use the 360 cap material, but then they cut out the groove and they don't recap that groove. The only reason is to save money. That's the only reason that they don't go back and recap that groove. So you'll have some manufacturers that still leave that groove uncapped, but your highest quality WPCs that are the most resistant to any form of mold, mildew, water damage over time are 360 capped, including the groove. And this polymer is your shield towards, adhesives, chemicals, damages from somebody spilling drinks or things on it. Long-lasting solution, and is a low maintenance solution, is the big reason a lot of people are turning to it. However, with the cost, WPCs are going to be more expensive up front. They 100% are. Let's see, sorry, Brad, let me see his question. Is wood plastic composite decking acceptable to moving material for wildland urban interfaces in California? Since they probably motion proof material. Depends on the manufacturer. You do have to check with that manufacturer and see if they have a California Wildlands Urban Interface approval. Now, depending on the manufacturer, a lot of manufacturers are in a process of, they have been approved before, but now they're having to get reapproved. And the WUI, that's the shortening for Wildland Urban Interfaces, WUI is not known for getting that process done quickly. And by not done quickly, I mean over a year sometimes, in order to get that done. Do most WC decking providers offer similar decking framing materials? Yes, you will see similar for framing. Most WPC manufacturers don't offer your joist system, because your joist system is just going to be made from pressure treated wood. So for the most part, you're not going to see those made with the framing materials. But the deck materials, yes, it's similar. Like I said, there are ratios of what they do to make that material is going to be different based on each manufacturer, and then how many profiles do they offer, how many colors do they offer, all of those things are going to vary. But for the most part, you are going to see similar offerings in the deck materials. It's just the framing materials that you're really having to do that in. What is the E free span of the decking? I am not sure what that question is, Patricia. I'm not sure what you mean by the E free span. I am not too sure what you mean. If you could clarify that for me here in a second. All right, let's see here. So little bit of his framing distance. Okay, thank you, Patricia. Yeah, most of the joists you're going to have a joist for the width of each board. Sorry, had to remember for a second. Width of each board, you're going to have framing joists, couple inches, and then you're going to have a either screw if you're doing deck screws, or you're going to have hidden fastener clips if you're doing a grooved board, and your clips or screws on a residential job are going to be every 16 inches on center. On a commercial job, they're going to be every 12 inches on center. Where you need your framing distance for the wood, it is going to depend on the width of the boards that you're sourcing, which for a lot of manufacturers is somewhere around like 5 and some change inches of width. So it depends on the manufacturer for the width, but you're going to have your screws or clips every 16 inches for a residential job, every 12 inches for a commercial job. So with that first generation of non-cap decking, a lot of issues, like I mentioned. You had a lot of scratching, a lot of expansion issues. You had cupping, you had color fading, fungus and mold mildew, because there was nothing protecting that composite. It was just a composite core exposed to the elements. You had lots of issues with non-cap decking. That's why it doesn't exist anymore, because it had issues. So then they made a slight improvement with capped with a layer of wood powder on the top, but had mostly the same problems. You saw some less issues, but it was kind of like slapping a band-aid on a 3-inch deep cut. Capped halfway was the first real attempt at solving a lot of the issues that WPCs saw. It solved a lot of the stain issues, it solved the scratching issues, it solved the UV issues. However, didn't solve the cupping issue. And actually, it made the cupping issue worse because now you had the top of the boards were fine, but moisture was getting in the cracks, getting either underneath the board or in the grooves, and then you started seeing this cracking and cupping as the boards would kind of concave on themselves. Now you got to your completely capped with a routed groove. These are still in the market. Companies do still sell these and these do still work. But like I mentioned, that little exposed cap that you see right here, so just your little exposed groove, this is where moisture can still penetrate and potentially cause issues with cupping and cracking of the boards. The only reason that a manufacturer does not cover this after they route those grooves is to save money. That is the only reason. The best thing you can get with WPC decking is fully capped decking. Fully capped, 360 degrees, shields the boards from mold, mildew, UV, radiation, water, engineering grade polymer. Like it's a good product. It keeps itself protected from the elements, from water damage, from other issues. And as the core remains susceptible to outside elements on your edges, you'll use end caps or some sort of a sealant to cover any unprotected ends. So if you ever had to cut into a material to cut open, let's say you have a 16-foot deck board and you're installing on a 13-foot section, if you have to cut a piece off of that WPC, you are going to want to seal that area that you just cut open. So where you have that exposed composite, you are going to want to seal it with like a Thompson's water seal or something else. The reason that you won't as likely see damage, because compared to routed grooves, that are uncapped where water can sit because you have an actual spot for water to sit. When you have a flat horizontal surface, you're much less likely to see it, but it's better safe than sorry to just seal that with like some water-based sealant. Now, fully capped boards have another advantage that they can come in multiple colors because you both do colors that wood naturally comes in, like your teaks, your ipes, your Japanese cedars, but you can get into some of the more fun colors because you're coating in a polymer. You can just use the polymer to or a different base material with your polymer. You can use different dyes in order to have cool colors, which is what keeps the walking surface from being slippery in the rain. It's the texture of the board. The texturing of the deck boards now, depending on the manufacturer and what texturing they have, some of these are still slippery. Like I want to say it's an R9 for most composite manufacturers is like an R9 on the slip coefficient. I would think R9 is the right word I'm looking for there. It's like an R9 or R10 somewhere around there for most slip coefficients. I think that's right. I'm trying to recall that. It's been a minute since I had to answer that one. But point being, depends on the profile. There are also certain profiles that some WPC manufacturers make that they say this one is just to be anti-slip. So if you want something around your pool or insert area like stairs that you're really worried about slipping, it just depends on the texturing of the boards. Like if you have straight grain flat WPCs that don't have texturing to them, those are going to be slippery. They 100% are going to be slippery. Versus when you have something like the images you have on the screen right now that are very textured boards, it helps reduce with the slip coefficient. So just a couple of different potential profiles for fully capped boards. You have your complete square edge boards, your grooved solid boards, the scallop boards we talked about. And then just some imaging that shows what I've been going over with the capped versus conventional uncapped slash routed grooves. With the fully capped, you're much more resistant to stain splitting, mold color fading, whereas you can see a lot of those issues with uncapped boards. Another product that a lot of WPC manufacturers have started looking into, it does depend on the manufacturer, is decking tiles. Usually a locking system, really good for non-permanent structures because decking tiles are installed on a plastic grid system so that they just snap together. So it's pieces of WPC sitting on top of a grid system that snap together that are just meant to go over an existing deck or concrete slab. A lot of places you're seeing these used right now are rooftop decks. These can go over like TPO or other rubber roofing. For a brand new install, you can usually just do the existing layer of TPO or torch down. But if you're installing these on a old deck, you've got like some 7, 8 year old TPO torch down, usually want to put down another layer to kind of act like a sacrifice because you are having the plastic just press into it. But if you're putting these over an existing wood deck or concrete slab, no issues. DCO, what is looking? Yeah, okay, yes, thank you, Chris. Yeah, the dynamic slip coefficient. Yes, thank you for that. So deck tile, fascia, and trim. So with the deck tiles, a lot of the manufacturers have different pieces of trim, whether it's a fascia trim or a straight trim to help finish out installs. Again, really cool option that you can have with these that can either look completely natural, can go for a checkerboard like you're seeing here, or you can go for some weird and wacky colors, but just different options on either doing fascia pieces or outward trims. And then y'all should have just gotten a webinar poll in the that popped up for you guys to answer about the presentation. Now, WPC decking versus siding. WPCs can be used as siding as well, but WPC siding is used with interlocking planks, so it's a tongue and groove system that acts as a total rain screen system with a water resistant barrier. Decking does not do that. So if you ever see a WPC manufacturer that it has a different install guide that says you can just put their decking up as siding, it is not siding. You are just putting decking up against a wall. Versus some other WPC manufacturers do make legitimate tongue and groove WPC siding that you have that acts as a real rain screen. And they will tell you, please don't install our deck boards as a siding material. So when you're doing that, you check with the material, with the manufacturer. When replacing traditional wood decking, was standard practice for making up the difference? So if you are dealing, I'm assuming that you're asking if you have an existing frame and the deck boards don't meet the frame that you're trying to put the deck boards on. So if you're taking out old wood decking and trying to put up WPC decking on an existing frame, if the boards do not meet the widths that you need for that frame, you are going to have to reframe because you do need, or just put up more joists. So you're either going to have to build a new frame or put up new joists that will help you with those sections because you do need your deck screws or your hidden fastener system on a WPC deck to be just running along the center of your joists. So it's either going to have to be put up additional joists or frame a new joist system. So, yep. This is just an example of different grains, like a cathedral grain or a rustic grain that you can see on WPC products. Again, with those regular, we'll call it natural colors like a Roman antique, regular teak, a walnut, ipe. You can get into real colors or you can get into some totally wacky colors. Okay, quick review question. 2 elements that make up a fully capped WPC. Does anybody remember what those are? Maybe that doesn't match question was about the difference between half-inch thick lumber versus shallower WPC thresholds. I'm not 100% sure if that was what the question was about. You guys will have my information after this, so if you need to like get on a call with me to go over anything more specific about WPCs, then I can definitely help get through that. But I am wanting to make sure that we get through everything in the presentation for now. I think I answered that right. If I didn't, please poke me when we get to the Q&A part. Because I'll have like just assuming I get through the whole presentation and we're not like 10 minutes over an hour, I will stick around for questions. Yes, yeah. And yeah, we got it right on the first time. Yeah, so the co-extruded cap and the composite core. That's what makes up your fully capped WPCs. Thank you, Dan. Now, installation of WPC decking. So, couple of things that are pretty standard, just having your gloves, your pants, your safety glasses. WPC, since there is chemicals involved in the manufacturing process, sometimes you do want to also make sure that you have a like just respiratory mask for doing the installation. Make sure that you have all the tools that you need for doing this. The installation of WPC decking does not massively vary from wood decking. The biggest one that you're going to see a difference is if you're using a hidden fastener system compared to decking screws, but that is just installing the hidden fasteners. It's not something massive. So again, deck screws or hidden fasteners that you can be used. You do not use nailing. And for WPCs, you always want to pre-drill the material. Do not just drill your deck screws in. You do need to pre-drill WPCs. Always. Always want to pre-drill. Because if you don't pre-drill it, then you can see like bulging areas from where you drilled your deck screws. Again, just different manufacturers will give you different recommendations on what they want. Most manufacturers do have their own screws and fasteners. I actually can't off the top of my head think of one that doesn't, but they will have their own color match deck screws and their own fasteners. So then expansion and contraction values. You do have to think about expansion and contraction with a composite. It is going to expand and contract lengthways, not widthwise. It will expand and contract lengthways. And for most installs, you're going to be locking down your expansion and contraction at the middle of the install. So if you're doing a hidden fastener installation, there's going to be a clip that is different from the others. It's called a locking clip that you're going to install in the middle of the board so that the boards will expand and contract out to your sides. This is so that you don't see bubbling and cupping as the boards expand and contract over time, that they will just expand out towards the edge at the same rate, you hope, and then back in. You might see a little bit of a variation, like a 1/16 of an inch of that one board is expanded more than another, but you will never see something crazy as long as all the boards are exposed to the same climate. And most WPC manufacturers have a chart that looks something like this that tells you, depending on what installation temperature you have, this is the amount of gap that you want to leave in between the end of a board and the next surface, whether that's the edge of a house, the picture frame of a deck, whatever it is. Depending on the length of the board that you are installing and the temperature that you are installing it at, here is the gap in either millimeters, inches. Different charts will show different things, but that would be the gap that you would want to leave. So if you're installing a 4-meter length board and it is 10 degrees Celsius outside, so it's nice and chilly, then you're going to want to leave a 6.4 millimeter gap. Again, I just went over all of that, but just one full length board across the deck, lock it in the middle. Now, if you install 2 boards across the deck, then you have to account for the gap that you need in your expansion, but you would also lock your expansion contraction at your butt joint so that the boards don't expand into each other so that you can expand outwards. And then if you're installing more than 2 boards across a deck, you are going to need to do a breaker board for an installation. So, which is what we're getting into here. If you do more than 2 boards in a single run, which most manufacturers manufacture 16-foot length boards or something of that similar length. So if you have a 50, like a 50-foot run, and you're going to need multiple boards. Like, in fact, at 50 feet, you're looking at 3 full-length boards, and then you'll have your breaker board that will account for some of it, but you'd have even a piece after that. You do need to have breaker boards because you can't have locked at a butt joint, and then you would have a problem with the other boards expanding into each other. So in this case is where you would do a breaker board. And for breaker board installations, you will want to make sure you have a ladder sister joist system going underneath for your breaker board installation, so that you can have your boards that are going into each other, or into the breaker board, I should say, your clip system that goes along those boards, and then your breaker board with the appropriate gapping. For stairs, most of the time for WPC stairs, you're going to use the completely square edge solid boards, in which case you would just be using deck screws. You're not going to be using a hidden fastener system. And then for the risers, you can use either another deck board, or some WPC manufacturers make a fascia board that you could use for this application. And again, making sure you have a flat surface for your installation. Most manufacturers will have a list like this that gives you your dimensions and residential and commercial spans on the joist installation for your framing. Then with the decking, you have different options on how to start the installation. Most of the manufacturers are going to have a specific clip that you can use to help get that installation started. Then you get onto your hidden fastener clip system, where here you can see your two different types of clips. You see your regular controlling the expansion and contraction clip over here, and then your locking of the expansion and contraction clip here. And then this is a mini gap system that some manufacturers will make, just to have a smaller gap in between the boards. Nothing fancy, it's just a smaller gap in between your boards. Here's those fascia boards that I was mentioning. You can use these for risers. You can use these for skirting around a deck if you wanted to use hidden fasteners around the whole deck, and then use fascia boards for skirting. Couple different options that you can use for installing fascia, but again, always pre-drill it, and then don't drill into the decking directly with them. Deck tiles we talked about a bit already, but just it's a really simple four-locking system that all they do is clip together. When you are going to need to worry about installing cut deck tiles, you can totally cut them. Most WPC manufacturers have a plastic grid with screws on the bottom. You can just remove those screws, so that when you have to cut through that piece of the plastic grid on the bottom, you don't have to worry about cutting through any metal. You just need a composite rated saw blade. So, quick question. For a single board, so not for multiple boards, two boards, three boards, for a single board installation, where is it recommended to lock the expansion and contraction? Midspan, yes, yes. Perfect. Yep, in the center, yes. All correct. Excellent. Thank you, guys. And then I'm going to quickly cover some maintenance and some standards testing. So this part will go relatively quickly, because you don't have a whole lot of maintenance. If you do, and so this, back to that question from the very beginning, if you do want to use a pressure washer, like wide fan tip, not a slight fan, like the widest fan tip you can get at very low PSI. And like you want to be at least a foot away from the decking if you're ever going to do it. So if you do pressure wash WPC, stay like at least a foot away, low pressure fan tip. But if you do have any spills that don't stain, go in, it's not difficult to clean. You wipe it up like it's a tile floor. scrubbed away immediately. If you do run into something that stains, most of the cases you can just use like some Dawn dish soap. And if you have a brand new deck that you spill something on and you're seeing like really bad staining issues, depending on the manufacturer, you can bring that up with warranties with them. But then dirt and debris, tannins, ice and snow, oil, grease, food, mold, and like you might see surface mold that goes on the top because if there's just some decaying dirt or organic material, you might see it, but it will just wash away like warm soapy water. If you can still put like rock salt or calcium chloride for having any ice and snow, not going to damage it. If you saw cut the board, you loosen the cap edge corrector would cap it on side after cutting. Yes, if you cut through a cut board, so if you, or I'm sorry, cut through a cut board. If you cut through a board on the job site and you have an exposed portion of cap, you can just reseal that with like a Thompson's water seal or a water-based sealant. Yes, and yeah, Jeff, that's an excellent point. Using like a plastic shovel for snow removal, so you're not sitting there using metal and scraping because there's only so much that the scraping resistance can hold up to. Yeah. Irregular heat sources and masonry construction. So if you are ever going to install WPCs around grills, fire pits, something like that, you just want to make sure that the heating element of whatever you're using is not in direct contact with the WPC. Most WPCs have a heat coefficient resistance of an ambient temperature of about 140 degrees Fahrenheit, depends on the manufacturer, but somewhere around 140 degrees Fahrenheit ambient temperature. So as long as you are not having the heating element of whatever you're installing around directly in contact with the WPC, you will be fine. Mineral deposits. So you do need to clean your decking every so often because in the grooves of the boards, you can get mineral deposit buildup. Really easy to clean up. Just like I said, some dishwashing gloves, a non-abrasive soft bristled brush, household laundry detergent, or like some Tide, or not Tide. I mean, Tide would work too, but like Dawn dish soap, all those things. Like nothing crazy. And most WPCs meet the following standards for international building codes, just for IBC. These are a variety of the different types of testing that is done to WPCs, everything from chalking, fire resistance, scratch resistance, thermal absorption, weather uplifting. There's a good couple things here. Stain testing, so comparing your non-capped versus your capped. You have your 360 capped on the left here, your non-capped on the right. You can obviously see where that has improved over time. Scratch testing over time, fully capped versus not capped. And then just a couple of quick little case study notes for you guys. So this is a case study with a blogger named Jamie Damick. So renovating your pool, and then put a WPC deck around the pool, resurfaced of it, seeing the deck, material didn't cause damage over time. Pool maintenance, so you see that the entire deck, including a pergola, were WPCs, scallop perforated boards. Did the whole redesign here. Oh, sorry, skipped one. Redesign of the patio area with a WPC privacy wall. Just using, again, they were happy about just gentle spray of water to keep it clean over time. And then this one is for renovating a 1960s bungalow. Enzyme cleaners work very well. Yes, that is true, Brad. So renovating a house entrance, DIY project with some deck tiles that you're seeing right here. So, yep. And then here's just a couple of resources that were included. So thank you guys so much for listening to the presentation. If you do have any other questions about WPCs and the presentation, I can take those right now. If there's anything that you didn't ask during the presentation that you would like me to help answer. Y'all had a lot of questions during it, so
I was gonna
that was very
say,
pleasant.
thanks for being so engaging during the presentation. We'll stay on for just another minute or so, just in case there's any final questions. Lots of you guys filled out the webinar poll, so Stephen or someone else from the NewTechWood team will be reaching out to you after today's webinar. But I think that might be it. So thank you so much, Stephen, for all the questions and the engaging presentation. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their week.
All right. Appreciate it, y'all.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye, Elizabeth.